For thousands of Greater Clevelanders, RTA is more than just transportation.
I use RTA for everything.
It's a lifeline.
I use it to get to work, I use it to go to Walmart to pick up my prescriptions. I use it for everything.
Lauren Brock told us she needs every penny she earns from 2 part-time jobs, in part to help pay her insulin bills because she's diabetic. So when the cost to ride the bus went up in 2016 by $0.25 per ride and by $10 for a monthly pass, that affected Lauren.
It makes it really hard to save money when I'm constantly buying bus passes because I need it.
Likewise, Edith Dunlap, a retired federal probation worker, told us she travels almost exclusively on RTA, but in 2016, RTA eliminated the portion of the Route 37 bus that Edith used to rely on every week.
It made where I could get to where I wanted to get in 8 minutes. Now, the same thing. It's almost an hour because I got to go 2 different routes.
RTA said it had to implement all the roughly 20 route cuts and reductions and all the fare increases because it faced a roughly $7 million shortfall. Before the route cuts and fare hikes hit, the head of RTA, Joe Calabrese, said they would only be put in place if they were absolutely necessary.
Cutting a bus route for someone is like taking their car away. If they can't get to work or can't get to school, it becomes very serious to them. So it's a very personal issue.
But where did the financial shortage that may have contributed to the cutbacks and the fare hikes come from? An internal audit summary obtained by the I-Team reveals RTA's own auditors questioned nearly $2 million in prescription payments made on behalf of some employees. RTA is primarily self-insured, meaning it covers a lot of its health care costs with its own dollars. Those dollars come in large part from a county-wide penny sales tax and bus and train fares. Money is even tighter now because state funding is drying up. Against this backdrop, we showed what we uncovered about prescription payments to a public transportation advocate and first to Cleveland's longest-serving city councilman, Mike Polensek.
That's absolutely incredible. Not only incredible, it's like shocking.
That's unbelievable. That's unbelievable.
Let's start with what's known as fluticasone propionate. The brand name is Flonase. It's a nasal spray for allergies that's now available over the counter, though you used to need a prescription. The summary of a confidential RTA internal audit reveals that the agency paid for prescription Flonase-type medications in 2 ways. The first way was what you'd expect, what RTA calls conventional. It's the second way that RTA's internal auditors questioned. During the 14-month period the audit examined, RTA paid for 774 prescriptions of the medication through the conventional means. The total cost was just over $8,200, or $10.59 per prescription. Over that same period, 103 prescriptions were filled through the question means at a total cost of, ready, over $1.5 million. That works out to over $14,600 per prescription.
14,000 smackaroos for Flonase?
How is this even allowed? How does the bureaucracy let this happen?
Although Flonase-type prescriptions make up over $1.5 million of the nearly $2 million in question payments, the audit summary shows RTA paid extraordinary amounts on every one of the 15 drugs listed. Clonidine HCl is a blood pressure medication. A brand name is Catapress. Through the conventional means, RTA paid for 88 prescriptions at a total cost of $119. That's just $1.36 per prescription. It paid for 3 prescriptions through the question means at a total cost of over $10,600, or over $3,500 per prescription. Gabapentin is a nerve pain medication. The conventional way, RTA paid for 414 prescriptions at a total cost of about $5,800, or $14.19 per prescription. Through the questioned way, RTA paid for 19 prescriptions, total cost over $53,000, or more than $2,800 per prescription. All total, RTA's internal auditors questioned 179 prescription payments at a total cost in excess of $1.8 million. If I were to tell you they wasted about $2 million buying prescriptions that should cost a few thousand, what would you think?
I'd be highly irritated.
I think it's unfair for them to pass that because of what they're doing. They passed it on to us.
Pass it on, riders say, in the form of higher fares and reduced routes.
I work for everything I have, And if they're just throwing around money like that, why are they in charge?
I think it's time for the board to step up and do their jobs and hold staff accountable for these mistakes. Because in the end, they are responsible to the voters and to the residents of Cuyahoga County to ensure that this system is run properly.
RTA officials declined to do an interview to explain what happened here. They say they won't do so because of a pending investigation. Meantime, the news about these question prescription payments is coming to light as RTA's budget appears to be growing ever tighter.
We cannot have this type of waste with our transit system that people depend on every day.
In the short term, due in large part to state cuts, RTA is trimming certain routes, including reducing the frequency that the Route 30 bus runs through Councilman Polensic's Collinwood ward. A proposed fare increase to $2.75 a ride that was to take effect this August is now expected to be put on hold by RTA's board for further study.
When you talk about a rate increase next time, someone's going to, what about the $14,000 bottle of Flonase?
Polensic says he respects RTA's leadership, but something needs to change.
If you keep jacking up the rates, then what does RTA mean? Return to the automobile.
But many people may not have that option, which is why the prescription charges anger them so.
If they aren't managing the money well, then we're the ones who have to pay for it. I have to give up more of my money that I'm working hard for. That's not fair on me.
For most of us, stepping onto an RTA bus or train is easy. RTA's paratransit system exists to allow people with disabilities to more easily access public transit. But the disabled weren't the only ones getting rides in the paratransit vans. Internal RTA documents stamped confidential say, quote, dispatchers and operators abuse the system to transport family, friends, and co-workers. Transport where? To entertainment venues, shopping, medical appointments, to complete personal errands, transporting children to and from school, and to the airport.
Literally just breaks my heart.
Marvin Randleson grew up riding RTA. He's now a public transit advocate for All Aboard Ohio.
I am really frustrated of the inability of RTA and their board to run a high quality system free of scandal, I guess that's what you could call it.
We reported back in 2016 that 3 RTA workers faced charges related to the abuse. But confidential RTA documents obtained since by the I-Team show the problem was more widespread than just those 3 people. We told RTA we wanted to discuss the paratransit issue. RTA set up an interview with Dr. Flounce Caver, who last October was promoted to Chief Operating Officer.
I am ultimately responsible for all of the service provided at RTA, which includes the bus, rail, and paratransit services.
Dr. Caver told us RTA conducted an investigation after employees reported the abuse in 2015.
3 of our employees were terminated for, in fact, providing rides that were not sanctioned under the ADA law.
And did a further investigation reveal that the problem was more widespread than just those 3 employees?
No. The FBI indicted 3 individuals, and those individuals pled guilty for it.
So the documents that I have that say there were other dispatchers who gave rides and that those were valued by RTA in excess of $100,000, those are incorrect?
I'm not sure of those documents.
Do you mind if I show it to you?
You can.
We then showed Dr. Caver a 4-page classified RTA document.
And if you look at the last paragraph on the last page is what I'm referring to.
That paragraph says in part, quote, other paratransit dispatchers scheduled hundreds of rides for family and friends. Later in the same paragraph, RTA's internal audit department wrote, quote, we estimate the cost of the rides provided to family and friends is $117,563. Dr. Caver read over the documents and then responded.
So I do have it here. I do see this here, but I have not seen this audit.
Were you aware that there were more than 3 people involved?
I was not.
Are you able to address the broader problem at this point, or are you not?
I'm not able to address the broader problem, but I am able to address that there were 3 individuals who were indicted by the FBI and the prosecutor.
A few days later, RTA sent out an update to us that said in part, the FBI decided to investigate the ringleaders, and those 3 pleaded guilty in 2016. The total loss was just over $120,000. Over a 12-year period, there were over 2,200 unauthorized rides. RTA says in that time frame it provided just over 7 million paratransit rides and that no paratransit riders were denied service because of the abuse. RTA described trying to find the fraud as, quote, like trying to find a needle in a haystack. Dr. Kaber says RTA now has newer systems in place that can actually search for possible fraud.
An example would be patterns of individuals who have not taken trips in a certain time frame, right? And so that then allows us to key in and find out why aren't these individuals taking trips.
Because in this case, in one of the three people you mentioned, somebody was using the card of a person who was deceased.
Yes.
The internal documents do say, quote, one customer account was used to book many trips for 14 months after the customer died.
A complete management audit RTA is necessary at this time to ensure that everyone is doing their job properly and the proper controls are set up within the organization to ensure that the public dollars are being spent properly.
The news about the paratransit system comes at a difficult time for RTA. Ridership is down and state funding is being cut. This week, RTA's board voted to draft tax hike proposals to put before voters, either a sales tax increase or a property tax hike. But how RTA spends its money has been in the news lately for all the wrong reasons, starting with an I-Team investigation back in March.
14,000 smackaroos for Flonase?
In March, the I-Team revealed that other internal confidential documents showed RTA's own auditors questioned over $1.8 million in prescription payments. That included paying for 103 containers of the nasal spray Flonase at an average price of over $14,000 apiece, for a total cost of over $1.5 million. Taxpayer-supported RTA is self-insured, meaning it pays for most of its own insurance.
You cannot justify that to anyone who steps onto a bus or a rapid car. You can't justify those numbers.
RTA later said it was the victim of a nationwide insurance scam. County prosecutors investigated but recently refused to charge any bus drivers, citing insufficient evidence of intent to defraud by the employees. The U.S. Attorney's Office will neither confirm nor deny the existence of a federal investigation. RTA had said in March, because there was a pending investigation, it wouldn't comment for our initial report on the prescription insurance payments.
That report opened the eyes of some board members that they have literally a legal responsibility to manage this agency.
Then, less than a month after our report, RTA's longtime board chairman, George Dixon, suddenly resigned over an insurance issue. An audit found Dixon had improperly received health insurance benefits for 24 years, totaling over $1 million.
The board is committed to the taxpayers to make sure that this never happens again.
Regarding the questioned prescription payments that included Flonase, RTA's own timeline says what it terms a scam went on for more than 2 years. RTA told us the abuse of the paratransit system spanned 12 years, and it said the Dixon insurance issue went on for 24 years.
Is it fair to ask who's minding the store?
I think that's a valid question. Absolutely a valid question.
Ann Randallson says with state funding drying up, local voters must have faith in RTA before they might agree at some point to give the agency more tax money.
They have to make those changes that are necessary to restore those faiths. If that requires major shakeups in management or major changes to how they do business, they have to do it. Whatever it is, they have to get to that place where the voters feel like they can support public transit again.
Bill Scheel, Fox 8 I-Team.
At its meeting earlier this week, RTA's board announced that its general manager, Joe Calabrese, would leave that role earlier than expected.
How RTA spends public money is ultimately the responsibility of the RTA board, including what the board spends on itself. And recently, RTA spending has been called into question. First, by an I-Team investigation that revealed, among other items, that RTA bought 103 containers of the nasal spray Flonase at an average cost of over $14,000 apiece, for a total expenditure of over $1.5 million. RTA later said it was the victim of a nationwide prescription insurance scam, though county prosecutors declined to charge anyone, and federal prosecutors won't say if they're investigating. Then, the longtime RTA board president, George Dixon, was forced out after an investigation revealed RTA spent over $1 million on health care benefits for Dixon over 24 years that he wasn't entitled to.
The board is committed to the taxpayers to make sure that this never happens again.
The RTA board is comprised of a mix of elected local officials, high-ranking public employees, and private civic leaders. The new president, Westlake Mayor Dennis Clough, told us each member has accepted payment for being on the board. RTA says that's $500 a month for Clough as chairman and $400 a month for other members. But at least for a couple of the board members who hold public jobs, that raises a question. Mike DeWine is the Attorney General of Ohio.
Public employees clearly under Ohio law cannot be paid by two different public entities for the same hours. It's kind of a basic concept. You can't get double pay.
Well, unless you're an elected official. We'll get to that in a moment. Two RTA board members, Cleveland City official Valerie McCall and Cleveland Schools official Leo Serrano, are public employees but are not elected. The Attorney General says as a general matter, public employees can't get paid separately by public boards unless they take vacation from their job for the time they spend working for the board.
Basically, you clock out from that job and go to the other, and that's probably not a problem because you're not getting paid, double. But getting paid double, it's against the law, it's wrong.
In a statement, RTA says Serrano and McCall are currently not being paid, and records confirm that. The agency says it began investigating the matter before the I-Team started asking questions. 2 weeks after our initial inquiry, RTA sought an opinion from the Ohio Ethics Commission to interpret the law. It says those responses are currently being reviewed. But regarding elected public officials who serve on the board, the law is clear. They can get paid both by their cities and by RTA. It is a different standard for public elected officials versus public employees.
Yes.
Case Western law professor Andrew Paulus says he doesn't agree with the reasoning behind having two standards. Would you say it's a double standard?
Well, I think there's a lot of doubling going on here, both in terms of the standard and in terms of the dipping.
Paulus says the reasoning is based on the idea that elected officials, such as Mayor Clough, Mayor Wheelo, and Newburgh Heights Mayor Trevor Elkins, aren't paid by the hour or even the day, and that they are accountable only to voters.
That ability to respond through the polling booth is deemed as a policy matter to be an adequate check on double dipping. So yes, there's a double standard. Yes, it's unfair, but the thought is we can address that if it's important to us at the polling place.
Some public boards choose not to pay their members. Major universities such as Kent State and Ohio State are two examples. Still, elected public officials can legally get paid twice by taxpayers for serving on a public board. Does that make sense? That's a good question. Bill Scheel, Fox 8 I-Team.